That's right. Now, say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Why am I cheering for Walt? Like, is he not the bad guy? No show to me has even gotten close to moving me in that way. Which to me is all about what filmmaking and content is, right? Like, you want to first establish that you care about these characters, then you want to walk through their journey with them. They crafted the characters so fully that you feel like they're your best friends.
Hi, I'm Taylor, and welcome back to the Film Nuts Podcast. I was doing some brief meditation this morning using one of those apps on my phone. I wanted to get to work on finishing up this episode, so I needed a quick practice just to get my day started. I found a 5-minute meditation to boost self-confidence, and the instructor had me repeat this mantra. You are enough. That was my best guided meditation voice. Anyway, it's a nice bit of affirmation, but what is enough? Is enough defined as satisfactory? Is it realizing what the limit on your ambitions might be? Or in some cases, is there even such a thing as enough? I think that last thought is one of the core themes in the critically and globally loved series Breaking Bad. When a high school chemistry teacher gets a cancer diagnosis, he partners up with one of his former students to cook meth in order to pay for his hospital bills and provide for his family. I don't think it's a secret to anyone how much he could gain from such a venture or how much he could lose. And with this balancing act, you're inherently going to come across complex and captivating characters. And it's for these reasons that this show is a favorite of today's talented guest. Carson Smucker is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and owner and executive producer of Upside Films. Carson's background is in sports documentaries, but like all great storytellers, his influences come from a wide variety of genres. From the cinematography to the score to the exquisitely crafted characters, Breaking Bad became a huge source of inspiration for him. Carson and I go way back, having worked together during my time at NC State. And while it was brief, we've kept in touch, well, because he's an awesome dude. So we talk about integrity in filmmaking, knowing when is enough between work and family, and how Carson's dad confused him with Jesse Pinkman. So let's get cooking. Here's Carson Smucker talking about Breaking Bad on the Film Nuts Podcast. Carson, what is up, man? How is life in Philadelphia?
Taylor, what's up, man? Everything's going well. Just hanging out with my little 6-month-old and, staying busy. And yeah, everything's been going well. How about you?
Yeah, things are great, man. What's it, how's that balance between dad life and production life going?
Well, I mean, as you know, production life gives you really no extra time to do anything. So it's been interesting, but now that I'm out on my own, it's been like a weird kind of, I feel like I have more freedom, but less time. So it's kind of like, that act of figuring out, okay, when can I really get some quality time in here? When can we, do some fun things as a family and still, be able to get all my work done, but without a boss calling you and saying you have to get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What led you to that decision to kind of take off on your own and start your own production company? I mean, you're with years with the Eagles, and then you're a couple of years over at the Carolina Panthers, and then you're like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm gonna do my own thing. What happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do it. Honestly, I've always wanted to own my own production company. I just always thought it would be really cool to, have a vision for what I want to do and then be able to execute it exactly without having, someone saying you have to do it X, Y, or Z way. After 10 years in the NFL and also a year down there at NC State with, hanging out with you and that motley crew.
Yeah.
It just got to the point where I was like, you know what, if it's not now, then when am I going to do it? So It took the dive about a year ago. And, it's been great. Been able to stay, doing a lot in the sports world. Been doing a lot of stuff with NFL teams still. Mm-hmm. Because, it's a small world. You know how it is. And it's the same way, I feel like, in NCAA. Like, it's just a small world. Like, everyone on all these teams. And so when they have work, I've been able to, do work for them and doing some work for ESPN. And it's been good, man. Yeah, it's been really good. But it's, it's not without... It's crazy weeks where you're like, okay, how am I going to get by here? And then the next week is great. And then the next week it's like... so it's not a steady paycheck every 2 weeks, but I've really enjoyed it. Last August we did. I was part of a crew that did an all access show with University of Miami football team, and we spent the entire August down in Miami, and it was a lot of fun. It was a 2-episode special that the ACC network did, and I just love telling stories of athletes and teams and the things that they've overcome, and the troubles that they have leading into a season, or the background of some of the players or the coaches, and so that was really fun, and that was probably one of the larger projects I was on. We were down in Miami for like a full month, so I was helping a little bit. I was leading the post production, but then also helping field produce a bit and stuff like that, and. You know all too well how it is creating an all-access show.
Yeah.
It's a ton of source, like a ridiculous amount of source, and it's just like picking the best little moments. And so, but I really enjoy that. I'm like one of those weird post-production guys that actually loves to like sit there, and go through like 8 hours of source to find the best 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, we're weird.
Yeah, we are. We are. We really are. You have to be a little bit of an odd guy or an odd person to like really be able to be like, yeah, I'm going to go through this 8 hours of source and get it down to like one good minute, the best like 1 to 2 minutes, and that's what I did today.
Yeah. Man, I feel you. So I had like a small like belief that you coming on the show, we were going to actually talk about something in the sports world, like some kind of really like motivational feature film or some kind of TV show about sports. But I knew 100% that you were going to pick Breaking Bad because I've known you for that long. And I know how much of a Breaking Bad fan you are. So why don't you tell me about Breaking Bad? Tell me why you love it.
It's funny, man, that to me, no show has even come close to what Breaking Bad was. And I know other people, have other shows that they said are just as good, and like Ozark and all those. But like all those shows have taken from what Breaking Bad did, in my opinion. And a lot of the things that that Breaking Bad was able to do in all their shows was setting up the characters and setting up the things that they need to get through in the and the loving yet hating the characters. It's the same thing in Ozark and all those other shows where they're doing something that's not right, but you still kind of empathize with the character. And Breaking Bad, I feel like just, was the first one to do that and was the best one to do it.
Stop trying to justify this whole thing and admit you're in danger.
Who are you talking to right now? Who is it you think you see? Do you know how much I make a year? Even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Do you know what would happen if I suddenly decided to stop going into work? A business big enough that it could be listed on the NASDAQ goes belly up. Disappears. It ceases to exist without me. No, you clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
I was actually late to the boat on Breaking Bad. I was like, it was almost in season 5 when I started watching it. My buddy Mitch, he was like, dude, you got to watch this thing. And I was like, I don't know. It doesn't really look, it looked interesting, but I didn't, I didn't think about it too much. And then I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I watched the first few episodes and started to get into it. was in college, and so like after class would just come home and watch it. And then you know how it is once you get into like season 2, 3 in Breaking Bad. It's like, dude, I'm all in because Gilligan was such a master at crafting these characters to make you care about every single one of them so much. And that pool between like, do I love them? Do I hate them? Do I love them? Do I hate them? Especially Walt is like so powerful because it's like you don't even really know who the protagonist is half the time because you're like, wait, I like this guy and he's like out there murdering people. He's out there like, watching this girl die in her bed. Like it's like, but I like this guy, and you're kind of like, it almost makes you do like some soul searching, right? Like why am I cheering for Walt? Like, is he not the bad guy? But I don't think any shows turned the like main character on its head as much and like taking you through that journey as a viewer to be like, dang, like why do I like this guy, or why do I not like this certain character? They did it. It was masterful with Walt and with Jesse and other characters.
Was there a particular, I mean, you said you're like gradually watching it, you're like getting into it. Was there a moment when you're like, yeah, like this is what I'm into. I'm in for the long haul?
It was in the middle of season 4 when Skyler had given all the money to Ted Beneke, and Walter went home to like, because he had to pay, I forget the exact scenario, he had to pay off Gus or somebody. So he had to go down to the basement where he had hid all of the money underneath like the floorboards.
Where's the rest?
Walt?
Down here!
Walt? What did that phone call mean?
Where is it? Where's the rest? The money, Skylar. Where is the rest? Skylar, where is the money?
And he went under to get it, and it wasn't there, and Skylar came over and was like, oh, I gave it away. And it was like he like put his head back and just started laughing in this weird like maniacal, like I'm totally screwed and gonna die laugh. And the camera was like a boom shot, and it was just like slowly pulling up on it and it would like reveal the floorboards. And then I think that's how the episode cut out at the end. And when it went to black, and without even trying it, I was like basically like standing up on my bed with my laptop in my hand. I was like, you know how when you're on the edge of your seat, you're like, okay, you kind of like sit up. Like I was like standing up on my bed with my laptop in hand, like, oh no, like totally just by myself doing all this. But that to me was a moment where I was like, I'm all in, man. No show to me has even gotten close to like, moving me in that way physically too.
Yeah. That's kind of wild though, that it took to season 4 for that moment, like that moment to kick in. Like up until that point, had you just been watching it and just like enjoying it because it was a good show, but that was the thing that pushed it into overdrive?
Yeah, even like season 2, season 3, it started to get really, really good. And you know how it is when you're binge watching a show. Like I just was like, I loved it. I loved it. But it was one of those like, I really love this show, but how's it going to end? Is it going to have a graceful landing? Some of these shows go way too long where you get into the 5th and 6th season, you're like, I'm not interested anymore. So for me, the verdict was still out. But the way that they landed Breaking Bad was so good because they could have easily had 8 or 9 seasons. Easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it probably would have gotten a little stale.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think so.
But they got out in the perfect time. They really did.
So going back to talking about reflecting on yourself watching these characters, reflecting on the fact that you're rooting for certain characters, did you happen to see any part of yourself in any of the characters you were watching? Did you identify with any of them?
Well, I identified with Jesse because people always said I look like him. So, but I mean, it's funny, man. My dad, my dad really got into Breaking Bad as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a couple years later, and I told my dad about it, and he watched Breaking Bad, and he started it. And then a week later, he was like, wow, he texted me, and he's like, that was awesome. I was like, you're done? He's like, yeah, I watched all 5 seasons. I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, I am so deep into it. He said, and he saw me and Jesse a lot. And he said he would wake up in the middle of the night, like worried for me. You know how it is in the middle of the night when you're like semi-lucid and it's like, wait a second, what's going on? And then he'd realize, oh no, like it was just Jesse. Like is in all that.
Carson's not cooking meth.
Right. Yeah. You know, so and then he would tell me about it. He'd get up in the middle of the night, like so worried for me. And then, he'd come to like you do in the middle of the night when you're coming out of dreams. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh wait, no, Carson's fine. Carson's fine. But I would say like Jesse would be one where I guess I saw myself in him in like a literal sense, but I would say Walter as well, in regards to just like not knowing when to stop sometimes, you know what I mean? Like not knowing, and I'm sure you know this too, like with like owning a new business. I mean, obviously this is selling meth; it's a little different, but you don't know when to stop sometimes. When it's just like, yeah, I'll do that job. Yeah, I'll do that job. It's like, but why not? Yeah, like I'll take that job on that's like way more than I can handle, and you just keep doing it. And I don't know if it's out of greed or just wanting to get more like experience or what it is, but sometimes as creatives, it's like we don't always know when to stop, and just like we say yes too much,
All the things that I did. You need to understand.
I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family.
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. And I was really I was alive.
Do you think, I mean, for everybody can speculate kind of the reasons that Walter White did what he did. Like it starts off, he does what he does for one specific reason, and then that reason continues to change as to why he keeps putting himself in this position of cooking meth and trying to like be a drug kingpin and doing all this kinds of crazy stuff when he was literally just a high school chemistry teacher who was terminally ill. Like this arc is insane. Do you think that like, I recognize it as he got to a point where almost he would never be satisfied with what he was doing. Like he would maybe try, he's like trying to get there, but he would never get there. Do you think there's some kind of, there's kind of like obvious dangers in not being satisfied to the point where you just keep on and keep on and keep on. But at the same time, you have to admire the fact that he doesn't really quit. But like,
yeah,
when it comes to like those ambitions that people have, doesn't matter if it's you, me, or Walter White, let me ask you this. Have you ever reached a point, or are you at a point where you're satisfied?
That's a great question. You mean satisfied just like from a viewpoint of like your life as a whole, or satisfied?
Yeah, it could be life as a whole. I mean, you got a beautiful family and your business is doing well, so it could be business related, or like, are you like, I'm not going to be happy until I win X number of Emmys or I win an Oscar, or like, what would you define your satisfaction level as?
Mm-hmm. From a career standpoint, I would say I've always had aspirations to produce and direct like my own long form doc that makes waves, that like moves the needle a little bit, and probably in the sports world, right? Like a 30 for 30 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like that's where my goals are. I'd love to do a 30 for 30. And I'm sure it's not like, if I would do that, I would just all of a sudden be satisfied in like career wise. Mm-hmm. But for me, that's always been like front of mind ever since I got into sports. I mean, I've always been obsessed with like the sports documentaries and, you know, like The Last Dance and all those. But I've always aspired to produce one of those. So that to me is when I feel like I would have some semblance of like, oh yeah, now I feel like I've done it, you know?
What would be subject matter wise? What would be a dream project for you?
You know, I really I do like the archival based things, the talking head archival based things like The Last Dance. But I also like the access based things. But I mean, something like The Last Dance would have been like a dream project for me. Like if anyone ever does The Last Dance, on which I'm sure they eventually will, on like LeBron James, you know, that would be a dream project. Or like, you know, because I feel like once The Last Dance came out, all these other ones have come out. The Tom Brady's, the Joe Montana one came out. You know, so they're kind of like replicating it, but none of them have had impact, I think, of The Last Dance. And I think to create something again like that with the impact, and it was at such an interesting time too, like in the middle of COVID and everyone was stuck inside. So I think it had an extra bit of oomph because of that. But that would be, I think that would be my favorite or like dream project. Would be like an archival based, talking head based, like really, really slick looking talking heads and really great archival based. I mean, you'd have to have some awesome archival editors, which, you know, they did. It's like some of that stuff in The Last Dance, you're like, how did you find that? Like, where, like, what footage vault are you going down to find this stuff? It was just like, it blew my mind that really nothing happened in that doc. Like, there was nothing that happened in that doc. It was purely archival and talking heads. Like, they didn't even have any walk-in talks. Or like, oh, now we're at Jordan's house, you know, in his kitchen with him, you know, whatever. It was all, but it was so powerful because the storytelling was so great.
Hey folks, thank y'all so much for listening today. And a special shout out to my newest patron, Jesse. Jesse recently pledged a monthly amount to get access to behind the scenes goodies of the stuff I make, a personalized thank you message from me, and admittance to the Nut House, a Discord community all about storytelling. If y'all want to be cool like Jesse and participate in weekly watch-alongs as well as spitball topics for videos and podcast episodes I make, check out the show notes below for the link. There's absolutely no pressure to join, but you would be helping this little show grow and improve, and I would be eternally grateful for your support. You can also subscribe to the Film Nuts podcast on your platform of choice, absolutely free. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review so we know how we're doing. It also helps us get noticed by more awesome people like yourself. Okay, enough of that. Let's get back in the lab. As a storyteller, and when it comes to storytelling, why do you think that viewers engage with characters in situations where they're kind of at their lowest point?
I don't know. I mean, I think people can empathize with that, right? Like we've all been to points where, you know, you feel like you're at your lowest point and you're always interested to see how they react, right? Like you're always interested to see how Walt would react in Breaking Bad when all the money was gone, you know? You're always interested to see, because I think you can put yourself in their shoes. Like, oh, I remember when I was at this low point. I remember when I was at this, because, you know, it's life, right? Like we all go through that where you feel like you're at your lowest point. So I do think it's that people can see themselves in characters, and it's like, how does this person react compared to how I reacted or will react?
Was there a particular moment in the show that one character was at a low point that you've almost felt it kind of like physically, outside of Walter laughing maniacally in the floor crawl space of his house?
I mean, when Jesse had some low points, I mean, Aaron Paul just absolutely annihilated his role in that. But I think some of the points that really struck me about him was one of the low points was when he was throwing the money out of the windows. I thought that was really interesting, and how he reacted to everything that was going on by like going down the street and just throwing money.
Hey, come back. Yeah, you, come here, I got something for you. Here, take it. Go ahead. Just take it. Take it.
And then the very end, when he drives off at the very end, and that, that's not a low point, that's a high point. But like that to me was just one of the most emotional scenes, and like driving off and just yelling. One of the last shots of the show, and his face, I don't know, he's like so like his face is so emotive, like he shows off so much what he's feeling or what this fictional character is feeling. That those are the moments that stick out for me. It's more of a high point, but
Yeah. Is there anything, so how, with Breaking Bad being your favorite show, has it inspired you at all in your work? Is there a shot you always try to like see if you can recreate in the sports world, or is it something along the lines of the way something's edited together or anything like that?
Yeah, I always loved their interstitials when they would go to those time lapses, those sound design time lapses. Like in the middle of New Mexico, it would be like outside the house and there'd be like cars going by or something like that. And it was always stuck out to me as such a cool way to get through passage of time. Because for us, I feel like a lot of times it's like, I need to get through passage of time, like cut to an aerial, like, or cut to a,
Yeah.
like,
Dip to black.
Dip to black, come out of it, timestamp it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's how, and I feel like he turned that on his head, and it's like, okay, let me make these really cool hyperlapses and also sound design them really cool, and then put in some like foreshadowing. You know how a lot of the beginning of these shows had these like foreshadowing things with the pink bear and all that stuff. So I look at what Vince Gilligan did in that and try and put it into my work all the time, honestly. That small, it's a very small thing, but that interstitial thing I really love, the foreshadowing. And then, I mean, if you go on these Breaking Bad forums and things like that, or in these, fan sites, it's ridiculous, the Easter eggs. Like how many times have you watched through Breaking Bad? Just once?
Just once.
Okay. I would encourage you, go back through it again, or just Google Breaking Bad Easter eggs. And it's to a level that is absolutely insane.
What's one that you saw that blew your mind?
Jane. Okay, so Jane, the woman who passes, she earlier on in that episode is talking with Jesse about something.
Flat against your skin so it doesn't wiggle around too much. How much does he owe you anyway?
480.
Oh, hell, I'd be mad too if somebody owed me $500.
No. 480,000.
What? What?
1,000.
I'm on your back, baby, in case you throw up. On your side. Sit on your side.
And then later on that episode, what happens at the end? That's how she passes. Yeah. And it's like, wow, that's the small stuff that Gilligan and all those people, and I hate always just being like, oh, it's all Gilligan, because the producers and there's editors that are making these decisions as well. But like the whole crew was just like, that kind of stuff is so next level.
Yeah. I think that's the funny thing, is like Breaking Bad was one of those shows where I've only seen it once through, but I want to say almost one scene from every single episode is in my head somehow. Like it's one of those where everything sticks out because it feels like it's just like well crafted, you know, like everything about it is just like put together. I mean, even when they were going on, even they were filming during like the writer's strike, like they still had enough to like keep it together in a way that made everything memorable and propelled the story forward and all that stuff. So let's going with favorites now. Like, what is your favorite moment from this show?
I really liked, I don't know if you remember the Fly episode.
Oh, yeah.
So that to me was so awesome. That was one of my favorite moments in the show because it was kind of just like the writers and the network and Gilligan and all those people being like, we know we're good and we're just going to like mess with you guys. Mm-hmm. Putting an entire 1 hour show where they just are in the same spot for an entire hour just trying to track down this fly.
Hold up.
Something got into the lab.
So, what do we do? I mean, do we... Wait. I mean, should we be wearing masks?
No, it's not that kind of contaminant.
So it's like not dangerous? Mr. White, talk to me here.
Not to us, particularly, no.
How is that?
This is, I made it.
So exactly what kind of contaminant are we dealing with here?
Fly.
What do you mean?
Doesn't move the narrative ahead at all. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I don't know, to me, it was like, I was annoyed at the time when I was watching it. Like, what? You know, like the first 5 minutes, you're like, okay, this is like a cool little cutscene in.
Yeah.
And then you get halfway through, you're like, dude, I've been watching this for 30 minutes. and it's like, I'm like ticked off, right? Because I'm like, all right, well, this isn't moving the storyline ahead. So like, I feel like, you know, as a viewer, like I haven't gotten anything out of this.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Are you a Ted Lasso guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that one where the guy, and I only watched Ted Lasso kind of casually, but it reminded me of the one where the assistant coach like went out for the night.
Yeah, Coach Beard's night out. Yeah.
yeah. It like did not move anything forward.
Like, I understand that. I get that. I think for me, yeah, the Fly episode was really good. And those are like bottle episodes where they do take place in one setting. Like they're really designed to just have everything from the characters internally come out. Like it rarely has anything to do with story. It's just all about confining and making everyone uncomfortable, which I think when I saw that, I was in love with that. I was like, oh, this is different. Like we're like trying something new and not because, and it wasn't like gimmicky, you know, like there was a purpose for it. And yeah, you're like, you get frustrated when you realize we're not going to venture outside of the lab, but at the same time, like it had a lot of impact and people getting to know those characters. I think for me, like the moment that always comes back to me is in season 5. I think that episode is called Ozymandias, and it's like the second to last or third to last episode. And it's a shot of Walt's face, profile shot of Walt's face on the ground. And it like mimics Gus Fring's.
You're the smartest guy I ever met. And you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago. Do what you're gonna do.
That was a moment that I was like, oh, like I recognized it. Because I think at that point, like I probably binged like seasons 1 through 3 on whenever it was on Netflix. And then I watched 4 and 5 like as they were live.
Yeah.
And so I still had it fresh enough in my head from the binge to then see it and connect it back like in that Easter egg style, that foreshadowing style. I was like, oh, this is like that. Like I said, attention to craftsmanship really drew me in to this show. It was like on a whole nother level, I thought.
They didn't miss a beat, man.
So if people haven't seen Breaking Bad, we've spoiled it. However, if people haven't seen it, why should people watch Breaking Bad?
People should watch Breaking Bad because of how deeply you get involved with the characters. I've never watched a show that's even come close to having me care so much for the characters, which to me is all about what filmmaking and content is, right? Like, you're not going to watch a show where you don't care about any of these characters, right? Like, you want to first establish that you care about these characters, then you want to walk through their journey with them. And they crafted the characters so fully that you feel like they're your best friends and you're walking through like this insane journey with them. And that would be my pitch, is that if you want to watch a show that will blow your mind with how close you feel like you are to these fictional characters, it's like anything. Like when you read a good book, right? You're like, man, like I just like feel what this character is going through so much. That would be my pitch. That would be my pitch, is if you want to get really close to these characters and see and really watch a clinic of filmmaking and character development, it's definitely the show to watch.
Is there a difference between crafting these fictional characters and presenting and the way documentaries present real people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with, a show like Breaking Bad, they could just create them however they wanted to, right? They could say that this is the turn, they're going to turn down this road next, in their journey, they're going to go down this road. With documentary, you're just crafting. You're just crafting what exactly is happening. But you know better than most how much you can craft a story and edit. And it's kind of scary sometimes when you're editing docs and it's like, I can really tell this story. If you have enough source, you can really have people say anything, So sometimes you watch, and that's how they do it in these reality shows and things like that, They Frankenbite something together and have this person say something that they might have never said. So there is some definitely manipulation, but when I produce and edit, and I try to stay away from that as much as possible, right? Like get across what the person is actually going through and what the person is actually, the sentiment of what they're trying to say. But there's more parallels, I think, than what most people think between like what you might see in a documentary and what you might see on fiction,
Like what? Like what's an example? Can you think of one?
Like when you see a documentary that's so convincing that this person has done X, Y, or Z, and then the person comes out and they're like, yeah, that wasn't what I said, or that wasn't what I meant to come across. But in documentaries, you can craft it so well with like swells in music, with Frankenbiting like different source footage together, as far as like talking heads over B-roll. If you have B-roll over anything, you can just like cut together whatever they said. Like I'm gonna take a and from here. I'm gonna take a it from here. Like, so to me, it's like the people that can tell the stories really, because I know like even in Last Dance, Michael Jordan was like, I didn't, like some of these things, like that's not how it was. But you can manipulate the viewer so much. You can do it more in fiction, obviously. Because you have like just like totally creative. You can do whatever because they're not real people. But documentary, I think there's a lot of that as well.
How do you find the appropriate balance between putting together something that's truthful and yet making it more engaging than it naturally is?
That's a great question. I mean, it's just a balance. It's a balance of figuring out, okay, this story didn't pan out how I wanted it to, or I thought there was more substance here than there actually is. I'm sure you've gone through that too, like with one and some of those others. Like maybe you dig into an athlete's background or like a story that you think is like really engaging and you're through it and you're like, wait a second. Like this isn't near as engaging as I may have thought in my mind at the beginning of going down this road was. So to me, I mean, like if you can do pickups, like from a production standpoint, like if you can go back and like try and finagle it down like another road, or get different perspectives on it. That's what I usually try and do. And then time doesn't always allow for that, but like if something doesn't turn out, maybe the subject wasn't super, the subject didn't necessarily come across on camera. You know what I mean? Or isn't as charismatic as you might want. I think it's worth getting different perspectives, whether it's someone in their family or someone that's going through something similar to them. Or so, when I go down the road of like telling a character's story and it's not panning out, it's like, okay, what can we do here to get additional voices? And then what can we do here to get in and out of it pretty quickly so that it's still very impactful, but it's more impactful in like a short, okay, maybe we thought there was going to be 5 minutes in the show. It's going to be 2, and you can still make the impact because in those 2 minutes, you have enough substance for 2 minutes of a nice little story. But, you got to find different ways to fill the other time.
On a personal level though, like when you're editing something, when you're crafting something, whether it's a show or a film or whatever, how about this? Have you ever reached a point where you're like, man, this story would be really great if we went down this road, but I'm building this road out of editing and it's not really one that's actually there. In other words, you're kind of like, you want to make it better. You want to think how you can make it better, how to make it more entertaining, but at the same time, has that ever gone against maybe like what the root of the project is?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you do go down that road, it's just important to have buy-in from the subject and that you're not painting them in a way that's just totally inaccurate. Because you can still have like the actual substance of the person and that, maybe the journey, you finagle it a little in the edit. I just want to make sure, if that does happen, it's like, okay, let's reach out to the subject and make sure, hey, are you cool with us telling a story in this way? Yeah. Are you cool with, but I mean, I try not to like, make them say something that they've never actually said. And things like that, but like, how it is as in post, like you're like, this is going nowhere, man. I have to pivot here and go a different way. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Is there an episode of Breaking Bad that you would have loved to direct?
I mean, the episode when Gus Fring comes out of the room and they had his one side of his face is missing. That episode would have been awesome to direct.
Is that how you want to be remembered? Last chance to look at me, actor.
Just because the vision of that whole thing. The camera move of that, the half circle around revealing the side of his face, like he walks out and you think he's fine, and then the half circle, like that to me was just like, I would have loved to be on set, or like I wish they would have, maybe they do, have some like BTS of that to just like see how they did that, right? Like from a CG perspective and like from all of that, it just would have been awesome to be involved on something that cool. And that camera move and that visual like will always stick with me. When he walks out of the room, it's like, oh, he's fine. Oh no, half circle around his face, he is not fine.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about involving Breaking Bad that you might wanted to touch on or talk about?
I don't think so, man. Yeah, okay. I think you had great questions.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate
You're really good at this podcast thing.
Thanks, man. I'm trying. There are plenty of people smarter than me who have broken down why we love complex characters. But to throw in my tiny 2 cents, what makes shows like Breaking Bad so compelling is this combination of ambition and empathy. We want stuff. We want to accomplish things. That's ambition. So when we see someone else striving for what they want and having that ambition, we connect with that. We relate to that. We empathize with that struggle because we see us in these characters. In Walter White's case, we just have to make sure our ambition doesn't go unchecked. Or not. You do you. Just be careful out there. A huge thanks to Carson for talking with me about one of the best shows of all time, and an RV-sized thank you to you for listening. If y'all want to check out some of Carson's work, please check out the show notes for more of that information. And if you liked what you heard today, please go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our episodes. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating or review to help us reach more awesome folks like yourself. And if you're really enjoying what you're listening to, please consider supporting the show on Patreon. Your monthly support would mean the world to me, and you get cool stuff in return. For more info on that, check out the show notes as well. Our theme this season is brought to us by The Deep End, and the Film Nuts podcast is hosted and produced by me, Taylor D. Adams. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email hello@filmnutspodcast.com or tweet at us at Film Nuts Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and I sincerely hope no one throws your pizza on the roof.